Carolina is visiting Miami. Miami's a 14-point favorite right now. Last week on the show, we talked for a minute about the Giants, and ultimately you decided to back Miami as a really big favorite. Turned out to be exactly the right call. Carolina, you talked about luck rankings, and you know how much I love the luck rankings by Sean Kerner and Nick Giffen and Billy Ward, our predictive analytics team. Everyone must check them out. They will do like what the expected score would have been if you clean up the noise of unforeseen circumstances, right? You get rid of some turnovers, you get rid of some bad luck, et cetera, et cetera. Carolina this year, the expected scores in their games would have been like 91 for Carolina, 144 for their opponents. The actual score in their games, 91 for Carolina, 144 for their opponents. Carolina is exactly who we think they are, a terrible football team with Bryce Young averaging the fewest air yards per completion or something like that. Awful, awful football team. Do we back Miami again as a massive favorite?
And I don't know if you saw the clip of Frank Reich talking about everything that went into getting Bryce Young, but he basically put it on the owner. Like he pretty much openly said, I wanted a different quarterback, and the owner was the one that stepped in. And we
I didn't see
talked,
that.
yeah, we talked ad nauseum all offseason before the draft. Everything I was hearing and how everything I heard was everyone on the coaching staff was all in on CJ. Everyone loved CJ, brought him for the interview, and they loved him, loved the kid. And then out of nowhere, 2 weeks before the draft, the Bryce Young number moved, and it looks like it was the owner that stepped in and took this kid, which, you know, is looking like a total bust. Like this kid is just undersized. He looks completely terrified out there, and I don't want to put too much on him because it's just really not his fault. Like I think Bryce Young does have a ton of talent. He's one of the smartest quarterbacks ever to come out of college football. They've set him up to fail, and I tried to go in on them last week at +10. It was a good number against that Lions team, and they totally steamrolled them. Like every time he has the ball, I just have no confidence in this team getting downfield and scoring. And I want to take them here. This is such a big number, but if you're giving me, some books have at 13.5 right now for Miami, and Tua had a bad game last week, and they still covered at 16. Like he threw a pick six, and they still beat the Giants by double digits. So, they're a team that I told you I wouldn't get caught by this Miami team. I adjusted my rankings. Even after the Bills game, they got blown out by the Bills. I did not move them in my power rank because I kept them right where I had them before the game, which was right behind the Bills. It's like, they're just not that bad of a team compared to these other top tier teams. So if I'm going to give these, tons of respect to these really good teams like the Lions, who I should have gave more respect to against this Carolina team, I have to do it here with Miami, Chad. So I hate it. I hate doing it. I hate taking a big favorite again, back-to-back weeks. But how does Carolina keep up in this game? Like, is Adam Thielen really going to go off again for another 150 yards and a touchdown? Like, it just isn't there for Carolina. They're going to get, if they get into shootouts, they're never going to win. I don't think they have the dogs on defense anymore to get stopped. So I'm not seeing how this team makes the moves and makes the decisions, and the coaching too on Carolina. Like they're just so outclassed right now compared to Miami. I'll do the chalky pick. I'll take the big favorite in Miami here. Under 14, though. If you get 13.5, that's a big deal to me. So hopefully you can find that 13.5.
Producer Tito just put a note in the chat. In April, Panthers owner David Tepper said the team didn't need an elite wide receiver because Bryce Young was going to be playing QB like a point guard. You know what's interesting? You and I are more afraid to bet a team that is setting offensive records as a 2-touchdown favorite than we are to bet on a terrible team with one of the worst performing quarterbacks in the NFL right now. Isn't that interesting? Like the psychology of bettors, that a 14-point favorite, which is an automatic play for the public, is scarier for us than a 14-point underdog on a terrible team.
Yeah, our brains are wired weird, but it's also for good reason. Like when Tua threw that pick six, I was like, well, that bet's dead. Like you don't overcome a pick six
No,
when you're
I
double
agree.
digit
I saw
favorite.
that. I'm like, that's fucked.
Yeah, but Miami, their offense is so good. That's why it's like I want to get there. The Panthers, But after a bad week, I expect Miami to get things right offensively. And this is a great game to get right against. Like Panthers defense, they really have nothing strong. Like maybe they can stop the run a little bit. Maybe that's their strength. But against the pass, this team is just terrible.